with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Mental illness is up dramatically since the epidemic hit America. Consider this from the Holy Scripture.
For action and being sober-minded, set your hope full on the grace that will be brought to you. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13.
Are you sober-minded? Do you think there's no hope? There is, and it's waiting for you at your local church. There you'll find a healthy mindset that will give you strength and wisdom. The welcoming committee is there waiting for you. See you soon.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Granosky. So glad to be with you live on radio, podcast, and video stream. Happy to have this time with you as we look at the news together, guided by a search for the truth. We're not going to do the left versus right waste of time that has lied us into a bunch of nonsense over and over and over again, distracting us by telling us that we have to be preoccupied with electing the same failed system over and over again. No, we have to go to something better than that. We have to do something beyond that paradigm, and that means rejecting that tribalism completely. Rejecting it in its entirety that we try to aspire to on this show each and every day. One of the things that we've been covering, of course, is the continual misinformation that the corporate press continues to spread about health and matters related to the pandemic. Boy, did they have a field day attacking anybody who wanted to be rigorous and scientifically minded this last year and a half. So many times we've had censorship. Even on this program, people can't even find, my show when they look for it on their YouTube. They subscribe, they do all that, they can't find it. Or they go on, Facebook has throttled and shadowed everything. It turns out we just saw the news recently with Project Veritas reporting insiders at Facebook that they have been putting all kinds of measures in place to tamp down anybody who dares to question the 3 or 4 pharmaceutical companies that are supposed to have perfect 100% omnipotence, even though Orange Man Bad was the man who rushed them to develop the product. See, their little storylines don't make any sense. You're not allowed to criticize the products that were rushed to market by Orange Man Bad, the person that's so bad and so dangerous, these same platforms who censor any criticism of these rush products, these experimental products. These are the same platforms that ban the man that rushed these products into our market in the first place. It doesn't make any sense, does it? We're supposed to trust these products with our life and our children's lives, but they were rushed by a man that we're told is a disgraced casino mogul by the same media outlets that tell us that we can take the product that he rushed to market. See, they don't make any of none of their storylines make any sense if you take like 3 seconds to think about it, right? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, nuts. That's crazy. That's all it takes for us to realize how ridiculous all of these myths that the corporate press wants us to keep stuck in. Meanwhile, we're doing the hard research to give you the truth about how to take care of your body. I wanted to let you know, go to aneighborschoice.com. We're going to put it on the highlight menu when you go to our website, aneighborschoice.com, to make sure everybody can see it, which is our new roundtable on linoleic acid research, where we spoke with the distinguished professors Bruce Hammock and J. Bruce German to discuss what their research of linoleic acid has revealed about our immune system, about how severe burns work, about pain blockers, how do they work, about ARDS mortality, acute respiratory distress syndrome, which is what's really the scary thing for COVID. How all those things are activated because of the consumption of linoleic acid, which is omega-6 seed oils. When you're going to restaurants out to eat every time, when you're eating processed foods, look at the ingredients and make sure you don't see things like safflower oil, sunflower oil, canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil. Those things are what are contributing directly to so many of the problems, including, as we discover in this interview, we find out that the opioid crisis is exacerbated by and probably caused by the consumption of seed oils. That these seed oils create so much chronic pain for issues as the body tries to heal from inflammation. These seed oils are driving the inflammation such that they have created the market for the opioid level of pain reduction, which then becomes an addiction. And of course, here to profit, Big Pharma and their incestuous relationship with big government, where the FDA had a revolving door relationship with Purdue Pharma with their oxycodone products, making sure they put in a insert that said, don't worry, no worries, don't need to be concerned about addiction issues. They did that. That's what your FDA did. And yet people still want to believe. They're like the most fervent believers. It's sick. It's sad because it's like the more government abuses people, the more government lets people down. For some reason, it has this weird relationship with creating more fervent, faithful belief in the bureaucrats that continually abuse their trust that's been given to them by the people who believe in the omnipotent power of an all-knowing, all-seeing, all-controlling state. Millions of people, they put up with lie after lie after lie, and they believe in the government more. The government lies about wars. They send their kids off to lies. They get hurt. They come back. They say, hey, here's another war. Go for it. And they say, okay, let's do it again. They lie about the need for bailouts. They lie about how the world was going to be flooded by now with the global warming, and that's why we have to give the same companies who do the pollution more billions of dollars of handouts so that they can come up with fake green energy solutions. It's just one thing after another. Constant abuse the government and its crony allies do, and yet for some reason there's this weird relationship for some people that they want more and more government the more they find out the government abuses them. Isn't that weird? And it is sad because there are innocent people who end up being harmed in the process. You should have a right, if you want to go do your government religious worship, go worship. This is a free country, right? It's supposed to be. Supposed to have the right to worship what you want. If you want to worship the state, that's fine. But do not sacrifice anybody else's children in the process. Can we agree on that? No, that's the problem. We can't agree on that. Some folks think it's okay to sacrifice innocent children for their worship of the state. And that's where the problem comes, my friend, because we would love to allow people to have whatever worship they want, and they are free to worship the state. You can worship the state all day long, but the moment you start sacrificing our children is the moment we're going to draw the line against this disgusting addiction to abuse that so many folks who worship the state seem to have. You get lied to over and over again. You go ahead and you worship that state all day long. You go ahead and worship that abuser, that serial abuser that puts us into lies for wars, that puts us into lies for bailouts, that puts us into lies for a war on drugs, that tells you that your oxycodone is perfectly good to take, and then it addicts people into the point of hell. You go ahead and believe in that disgusting liar, but keep our families out of your sick death cult. We don't want to have time for that. We don't have time for that. You hear me? We do not have time to subject our families to this disgusting, idiotic worship of the state. It takes like half a nanosecond to realize this is a rigged game. But people want to believe in a fantasy. They want to believe that the television is just some kind of omnipotent, transcendent God that will just always tell them the right thing, and they get lied to over and over and over again. But we can't have this anymore. You're screwing around with people's lives, and at that point, you have to stop. So I'm asking people that want to worship the state, go ahead and worship the state. Put your idols. You've got candles for Dr. Fauci. If you want to worship a man who so stupidly funded the Wuhan Institute of Virology after we told you over and over and over and over and over again that this is what was happening and nobody would believe it until the television told them it was true, how stupid could you be? We don't have time to allow stupidity to harm our families. That's where we draw the line in this country. It is time for us to have a renaissance of critical thinking in this country. We don't have time to have a stupid death cult walk right off the cliff, especially when they're grabbing our children and pulling them off the cliff with us. No, you're not doing it. Get your hands off of our families. Get your nasty, culty hands off our families. We love you. We love people who worship the state. You are wonderful. We love you, but don't you ever put your hands on our families again. Your stupid lockdown idiocy that did nothing to help anybody. You crippled everybody's careers. You crippled everybody's jobs. You crippled the infrastructure of civilization. You crippled children's innocence with mass stupid stuff. There's no single evidence of outdoor mass transmission, of outdoor mass helping people. Nothing. But yet you stupidly still worship your state. You worship a man like Dr. Fauci who idiotically does nothing but fund CCP, Wuhan Institute of Virology, to unleash a virus, and you worship the dude with this stupid lab, which either they did it incompetently or whatever. You are worshiping the worst fool in the world you could possibly find. Pick anybody but him. But you want to worship your religion, you do that, but you keep your nasty sacrificial death drive that you seem to have off of innocent life. Deal? That's what we have to say to the status cult. I'm David Granotsky. We'll take a break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice.
David Granotsky here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Just remember that you have people with fragile positions, because when you lie for a living, when all you do is lie or get it wrong, if you just get it wrong, and again, this doesn't have to be lying on the part of every media outlet. The media outlet, they have a sycophantic worship of state and crony power. That's why the media is now telling you for the first time ever that Bill Gates is like best friends with Jeffrey Epstein, right? Now they're telling you that. They presented him as this Mickey Mouse safe little, all shucks, look at that little guy. He's so sweet. Look at him just smiling and telling us all what to do. Go back and stay in the house 6 more months. Best friend of Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Gates says. They didn't tell you that until they were done with him. He was a useful fool. They used him, and now they don't need him. Right? You had to sell boomers and everybody who believes in Bill Gates as this powerful figure. And I'm not picking on a generation. I'm just saying, they had to sell something. So they said, trot out this guy dressed in, Fred Rogers looking little outfits, right? Little sweaters. And he's shouting, oh, you've got to trust that we can put this thing on lockdown and all this stuff. And they had Dr. Fauci out there, and they deleted voices who would say this is coming from the lab. We could have changed the entire approach to doing this thing if we had had a fair and honest conversation, but we didn't. We still don't. Every post I make from scientists having mild criticism of lockdowns or mask policies or anything that Big Pharma does, Facebook they've admitted now with the Project Veritas release that they're actively suppressing it. These are publishers for giant pharmaceutical companies with known decades of criminal malfeasance. Did you know that did you know the National Institute for Health, which is what Dr. Fauci works at, was giving experimental AIDS drugs to foster children who did not have proper parental oversight to object? Did you know that? Did you know that they've had several criminal cases, including in Nigeria? That would be Pfizer, where they were introducing products and giving them to kids that were experimental drugs. Why does the media tell you that you should be trusting 100% to give these products to your kids? They are experimental drugs too. Why? That's not normal. That's not just because see, we have this bias where we think if something's big, it must be good, right? So you look, and they're not even that big. They're very small shells of what they were. But NBC and CBS and ABC, they look big. They look like big, powerful towers of information because they've been around because of government protection. They've had a monopoly for some time on the transmission of information. But we have this innate mimetic tendency to want to submit in times of unknown to sources of authority, to sources of reliability, to sources that look comfortable and familiar. So when everybody, including NBC and CBS and ABC, if they're all saying this is not something you can look at, that this virus could have come out of a Wuhan Institute of Virology, then when you're in the middle of the unknown, you look at that and then you look at some blog or a scientist in the lone wilderness here or there who always have their content flagged by big pharma media publishing outlets like Facebook. It creates this warped sense of reality in which you say, well, hey, I remember NBC. They used to do that Christmas special back when I was a little kid. Oh, I remember CBS. They do this. They've got all these different things, blah, 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 right? Oh, Brian Williams, one of those trustworthy sources who always tell it straight. So you create this comfort level that people are raised with these brands like Band-Aid, NBC, and all these people. They want to act like they're synonymous with media, right? You put on a Band-Aid trademark for your wound. You put on a NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN for your news. And it's just this kind of fantasy that we persist somewhat in having that, well, yeah, they're a little biased, but they are so powerful. They're so old and long lasting. Therefore, when they tell you something, even if you are skeptical of them, you still subconsciously feel like, well, maybe they're right. I mean, they're so rich and powerful, they must be true. Well, that's what they do with things like Bill Gates. He's the richest man in the world. If he tells us we should shut down the economy until we get vaccines, then, I mean, he's the richest man in the world. He must have enough researchers to tell him this is exactly the cutting edge information for our safety. I mean, isn't that what we would do? I mean, you see, we have a lot of fantasy built into our scripts that govern the way we discern information. And we need to get rid of those fantasies as quickly as possible, because those fantasies are leading us to a path of destruction. We have to be mindful that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, but somehow we know that sentence, but we don't know how to connect it to reality. Like, we still believe, and that's the power of mimesis. We want to desire what everybody else desires. We want to be like what everybody else seems to be. We want to fit in. That's why people are told, even when their state that they worship tells them you cannot wear your mask now, they're still double downing on wearing the mask because they want to be seen as different and distinct from the undesirables, which are those folks who are suspicious of state power. This is nothing new. This is an authoritarian impulse that human beings fall prey to since the dawn of time. It is only a new thing, the idea of liberty, the idea of personhood, the idea of the presumption of innocence, the idea of inalienable rights is a very new thing, a new concept introduced into history. And we must fight for it and guard it with everything we have, because without it, we're all going to be in trouble. We're all going to be in a lot of pain and suffering and misery. We must protect our liberties. We must protect the right to have conversations and not have these false little media platforms distort us into living hell. Back in just a moment with more.
Politics these days are just that, politics. Pathetic discussions about things that don't matter, while the pandemic, crime, and economic disparity march on. That's why you need a balanced approach to news, business, and entertainment in the state of Florida. That publication is newstalkflorida.com. Whether it's the White House, the courthouse, or your neighbor's house, News Talk Florida has the sources, articles, video, and audio that will be a must daily check-in from your laptop or mobile device. Take a look at newstalkflorida.com. Today's news and entertainment with a Florida slant.
Members of George Floyd's family emerged from their meeting with President Biden today, somber on the one-year anniversary of Floyd's death, but also encouraged that police reform bill can be finalized. Floyd's brother Rodney speaking outside the White House.
Today is about the remembrance of our brother George Floyd, father, uncle, friend, cousin.
In Minneapolis, where Floyd died, people are also gathering at the site. The FAA has downgraded Mexico's aviation status, saying the country does not meet international aviation safety standards. That means Mexican Air no longer add routes here to the U.S., and existing flights to the U.S. will be scrutinized. Moderna says its trials for its COVID-19 vaccine in 12 to 17-year-olds shows it's safe and effective against the coronavirus. The company is expected to ask for authorization next month. And a milestone for U.S. vaccinations, says officials say 50% of adults are now fully vaccinated. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
The more common sense, non-elitist approach. But you see how even the hard news breaks, even on a medium like talk radio, like ABC, they just sound like a PR firm for the big pharmaceutical companies. Pfizer, what did they say? Pfizer said 12-year-olds now can get the vaccine or something soon. So they're really just, they don't say a positive statement and a negative feedback. They don't do any kind of balance reporting. They just tell you, like a press release factory, for the interest of the giant companies and giant government bureaucracies that manage our life. So let's look at some of the things. Biden has said that he was going to save people from the debt created out of thin air all these years. The Gravel Institute says Biden just dropped student debt cancellation down to zero. That's right. The Biden administration has decided to cancel $0 in student debt. So another thing, these guys believe, this fantasy that somehow Uncle Biden can save them from accumulating student debt. But that's another fantasy, another myth, totally destroyed, totally evaporated. LifeSite News reports stalled COVID vaccination rates draw outrage from media liberals. For weeks, numerous observers have bemoaned the fact that the vaccination rate has stalled after months of growth, as an April New York Magazine piece put it. After initial rush, more than half of the U.S. population seems in little hurry to get their own COVID-19 vaccinations, yet vaccine activists remain committed to increasing complaints with sticks rather than carrots. As of May 23rd, more than 130 million Americans have fully taken one of the 3 abortion-tainted COVID-19 vaccines with emergency use authorization in the United States, or 39.2% of the population. Among the states, the highest vaccination percentage in the country is Maine at 51.9%. For weeks, numerous observers have bemoaned the fact that the vaccination rate has stalled after months of growth. The main reason those who plan not to be vaccinated give for their reluctance is a preference to wait and confirm it is safe, 24%, or doubting that the health effects from the disease would be serious if they contracted it, that's 21%, Gallup reports. Another 17% are concerned about the speed with which the vaccine was developed and 16% do not trust vaccines in general. Fewer attributed their unwillingness to other causes. This hesitancy has elicited intense hostility from many public personalities. USA Today columnist Michael Stern calls for shunning vaccine-hesitant Americans. Restaurants, movie theaters, gyms, barbers, airlines, and Ubers should require proof of vaccination before providing their services, he writes. And it shouldn't stop there. Businesses should make vaccination a requirement for employment. A COVID-19 out. See, he doesn't know anything about omega-6 seed oil consumption. He doesn't want to know. This is just another bully. He's a little Pravda bully, just touting little bigoted, disgusting lines. He knows nothing about science. He's just a bully trying to abuse people. I am not going to dignify these people with some kind of, oh, he's just misguided. No, when you're slamming people for having their own human sovereignty, he doesn't know anything about how to stop epidemics of people dying. He can't tell you what leukotoxin is. We talk about it. He doesn't know anything about leukotoxin. He doesn't know that that's what's contributing to the severe cases of COVID and ARDS. He probably doesn't know what ARDS is. And we have to stop allowing these people to be treated as if they're some kind of authority figure. They're not. They're just bullies, petty little bullies that worship the state and worship big business, and they want us to submit to their stupid little worship, and we don't have to. This is America. We don't put up with people telling us what to do, telling us we can't go to the this, that, can't get our hair cut. Well, you go cut your own hair, leave us alone. You stop telling us what we're supposed to do. I'm tired of these bullies, these Luddites. They don't know anything about science. He can't tell you what linoleic acid does. I'm telling you, these guys are such paper tigers, and nobody says it like it is. They always want to present these things in a left versus right thing or some kind of, it's just dumb. No, this people that say this stuff, you shouldn't be allowed to do nothing until you take an experimental drug with legal immunity. Like, shut the heck up. Get off the stage. You got nothing to say, you bully. What a loser. USA Today, give me a break. What a joke. This is yesterday's news. People should require friends to be vaccinated to attend the barbecues and birthday parties they host. Friends don't let friends spread the coronavirus. Ooh. But he won't tell you to stop eating the french fries because he doesn't know anything. He's just a TV warped mind. Using a bully pulpit of USA Today, McDonald's newspaper. What a fool. I'm supposed to listen to this guy and take this guy serious? Telling people that they can't have life without doing what he wants? Who is this little authoritarian? Go to North Korea. Go have fun over there. That's where folks like that have great ideas. Go over there where you want to force everybody to comply to your little ways because you're scared and you don't know anything about the reality. I'm so tired of listening to these fools. In another example, left-wing talk show host Jimmy Kimmel released a public service announcement in which several unidentified doctors and nurses encouraged audiences to get vaccinated, albeit mostly by asserting their perceived moral and intellectual superiority, mocking and condescending to Americans with concerns, and even cursing and flashing their middle fingers at the audience. The most recent target of their ire is Senator Rand Paul, an ophthalmologist who, despite being supportive of the COVID-19 vaccine, says he will not take one himself because he has already had and recovered from the virus, and therefore believes the antibodies render him naturally immune from reinfection. Until they show me evidence that people who have already had the infection are dying in large numbers or being hospitalized or getting very sick, I just made my own personal decision that I'm not getting vaccinated because I've already had the disease and I have natural immunity, Paul said over the weekend. In a free country, you would think people would honor the idea that each individual get to make the medical decision, that it wouldn't be a big brother coming to tell me what I have to do. Dr. Paul is following the science on the vaccine and masks for those who have developed immunity, his spokesperson said. Like tens of millions of other Americans who have recovered from COVID-19, Dr. Paul has developed an immune defense to the virus, which is the same goal and result of the vaccines. As such, Dr. Paul believes there are many millions of other Americans who should receive the vaccine ahead of him. That is especially true as clinical trials have shown the vaccines provide no appreciable additional immunity for those who have already recovered from the disease. While many office holders and media figures blame online misinformation for lingering vaccine hesitancy, considerably less contemplation has been spent on how the government's own actions contribute to mistrust from public health officials, contradictory guidances on every aspect of the pandemic, including masks, lockdowns, social distancing. And also remember, they said spray everything down. That they turned out had no bearing. They wanted everybody totally doing things that are against nature and their own health, like sanitizing everything they touch. Such stupidity. To mix messaging about vaccinated people still potentially transmitting the virus to others. In addition, doctors, medical professionals, and other observers pointed to the fact that clinical trials for the currently authorized COVID-19 vaccines were performed in less than a year, when such trials traditionally take a minimum of 2 to 4 years. One of the innovations of the Trump administration's Operation Warp Speed was conducting various aspects of the development process concurrently rather than sequentially, but that does not fully account for the condensing of clinical trial phases, each of which can take anywhere from 1 to 3 years on its own to just 3 months apiece. In a rare exception from the mainstream media's push for vaccination without asking serious questions, Bloomberg published an op-ed on May 19th by Faye Flam, who noted that the original clinical trials for the COVID vaccines were set up to get the minimum information needed to win emergency use approval, and follow-up study has been less than systematic. Flam calls for more rigorous tracking of side effects, especially for women experiencing disturbing changes in their menstrual cycles. So again, if they would take a holistic approach to this and say, hey, you don't all have to push out and get this product before you, they're mad at Senator Rand Paul for saying he doesn't want to take it even though he's had it, the virus. This is how you know you're dealing with shills for groupthink, right? They are pushing you into groupthink conformity. This is when you're dealing with the world of the sacred. In anthropology, when we talk about the world of the sacred, we're talking about the experience of unity and transcendence that people have when they get to be a part of a community based on the mutual exclusion of somebody else. That's what we're dealing with here. People want to mutually exclude someone. They enact in some sense, when you're dealing with the sacred, their groupthink and their transcendent high that they feel is only maintained as long as they have somebody to target with wrath and purging. This is a religious phenomenon from an anthropological perspective. And so even when Senator Rand Paul cites the science of natural herd immunity, they want to eliminate the concept that natural herd immunity is even a thing. They don't want to even have a scientific conversation. They want to have a fake political science push. And it's fake in the sense that they will use language like science to browbeat people. They'll use words that have nothing to do with the process of scientific discovery. So that's what you see going on here. Cooler heads are not allowed to prevail because cooler heads allow for the mimetic groupthink to dissipate. How can one person experience transcendent high of being a part of a collective when someone's constantly poking holes with evidence? You see, they don't want to hear criticism about pushing people, including children and young women, into a product that has not been thoroughly tested. They don't want to hear that in the same way that someone doesn't want to hear that their cult is wrong, that their religion is full of lies. They can't handle it because their sense of self and the transcendent high, the feeling of having a mission that one can be a part of, is so tied to the needs of human beings that when you deprive someone of that with evidence that dismisses their entire mythic fable completely, it shatters their very sense of reality, their very sense of love of oneself. It's fragile. It's self-constructed based on a need to fit into a group. That's why they are vicious and hateful to Rand Paul, because he's a person who's more intelligent than most of the vast majority of the people who are a part of the TV party. He's scientifically educated. He understands health. He understands medicine. He knows more about politics and economics than, the guys that the NBC and CBS people rely on and CNN. And so he's a threat to them. They can't handle it. People who are intelligent, who pop your fragile little religion the most, are the ones who they hate the most. The Sun reports Rand Paul receives chilling death threat as white powder and pic of him with rifle to his head sent to senator's home. Senator Rand Paul received a mysterious package filled with white powder at his Kentucky home on Monday, prompting the FBI to investigate its contents and the threatening image that came with it. The Republican received an envelope with a photo of himself, bruised and bandaged, next to Paul's face on the image, including a gun to his head with the words, "I'll finish what your neighbor started, you blank." Senator Rand Paul said, "I take these threats immensely seriously. As a repeated target of violence, it is reprehensible that Twitter allows C-list celebrities to encourage violence against me and my family." In a statement on Monday, Paul addressed the package and the threat, according to Fox News. "This must stop. Just this weekend, Richard Marks called for violence against me, and now we received this despicable powder-filled letter," he ended. Paul was referring to singer and songwriter Richard Marks, who tweeted on Sunday, "I'll say it again, if I ever meet Rand Paul's neighbor, I'm going to hug him and buy him as many drinks as he can consume." The image itself was referring to a 2017 assault on Paul by his neighbor, Renee Boucher. In August last year, Paul and his wife Kelly had a close call when a group of people surrounded them as they ventured back to their hotel room after the Republican National Convention. Paul also was in the news this week for saying he would not be getting the COVID-19 vaccine. Although the Republican tested positive for the virus in March 2020, Paul said he would not be getting the vaccine since he has already had natural immunity. Health experts, or so-called health experts that are sponsored by special interests apparently, and the CDC, which is also a revolving door relationship with Big Pharma, have advised people to get the vaccine because they are unsure how long natural immunity will last. So they need to be a part of an experiment that the TV and every freaking social media outlet is pressuring you to be a part of. Just like the seed oil experiment where they demonize ancestral animal fats for the sins of cigarettes causing heart. Ansel Keys, they have demonized for animal fats and still do, so that you eat seed oils as this giant experiment causing all the major chronic illnesses to be skyrocketing around this last century. But you see what this despicable, vicious, violent, insane, mentally insane ideology is doing? This herd mentality. You see how it does this? Where it creates a situation in which people feel justified to be very violent and vicious, bigots, to a person like Senator Rand Paul, who has done more to try to help folks have their freedom, to end wars that Joe Biden started and perpetuates, in which they occupy, particularly people of color around the world. That's what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris love to do. Rand Paul is trying to stop the occupation of people of color, but the bigots that want to threaten his life for doing so, they don't care. They're in like a virtual reality, like a living video game. They don't see straight. The media and government have created so much mentally ill, inflamed situations They have created such a toxic environment by spinning people around, being led by their nose. Put a mask on, put 2 masks on, take them off, do this, do that, stay in your house, don't get sunshine, eat seed oils that cause all these inflammatory things. They have been screwing with people so much. They are creating a horrific, violent, ideological possession that could have extremely, and does have extremely dangerous, threatening results. No sanity left in this madness. Hating people. Every time Rand Paul criticizes their Dr. Fauci, the genius who unleashed this virus by funding the CCP Wuhan Institute of Virology. These people are so bent out of reality that they are demonizing a man who questions the man who unleashed this virus into our lives by stupidly funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology, even when it had a low level of security equivalent to a dental office to handle with adding spike proteins to the coronaviruses to get them to come into humanized mice so that they could develop a vaccine. Why is there so much institutional support to always have to develop a vaccine? It's all that people funded, it seems like. They will fund the CCP Wuhan Institute of Virology with dentist-level security just to be able to have a vaccine ready to go in the case that something happens to happen. I mean, why should we be surprised with the lack of ethical integrity of the National Institutes for Health, knowing that, as I mentioned to you before, NPR reported in the 90s that this same group was providing experimental AIDS drugs to foster children, because they didn't have the kind of adult support necessary to protect them from being used for experimental drugs. Isn't that sick and pathetic? And you trust these people? Who in the world would trust these people to have your family's interest in mind, given their obvious record that the government says themselves? NPR is government media, and they report. If you go back in time, you'll see the reports where the National Institutes of Health were providing experimental AIDS drugs to foster kids. Why? That is shady as heck, to say the least. We'll take a break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice.
Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. David Gronowski here. So, I mean, that's what we see here. We see a lot of craziness. We see a lot of wild, vicious bigotry coming from the TV party because they continually spend their time demonizing people who disagree one little bit. You know, they tell you you've got to let go of your consumption of red meat. They don't tell you that their seed oils cause way more environmental destruction to produce than regenerative local agriculture. Even they want to create this fantasy. I am plant-based, therefore I don't hurt people. No, yeah, you do. You kill way more woodland animals eating a vegan diet with globalism providing you 24/7 access to foods and fruits that were typically seasonal for much of the world to be able to have. You're accessing rare, exotic, tropical fruits, flown around the world with all kinds of carbon footprints, right? But they live in this fantasy where they want to project their own hate, their own guilt onto you because they need indulgences. They want to eat their decadent little plant. And I'm not dissing. There's a good way to do plant-based, but these people, they have the same little script, everything they touch. I want to talk about low-temperature nuclear energy as a clean energy. They don't want to talk about it. They want to talk about wind farms and solar farms and all these things like biomass facilities that are actually not going to provide any clean energy in any significant way. Everything they cite is like a McDonald's fake version of the real deal, you know? That's why I don't do the conservative ink of just reacting to what they say. I provide a better solution, or I put on the people who provide better solutions with the science backing them up. But that happens for everything. They want to browbeat, we're for the science. Anytime you hear the word the science, you're talking to a troglodyte who knows nothing about science. The word the science is a tell that you're dealing with someone with a few missing pieces in their card deck, right? That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who want we call them postcard science fans. They want the postcard. They don't actually want to spend time hanging out understanding science. They don't want to watch the videos like what we provide, which you can go to aneighborschoice.com and look up our exclusive deep dive with Professor Bruce Hammock and Bruce German and Tucker Goodrich, detailing they've been doing the hard science research on the effects of consuming omega-6 seed oils. And it's devastating what it's doing as it relates to COVID, as it relates to chronic illness, as it relates to diabetes, as it relates to recovering from things like burns, as it relates to cancer, as it relates to pain. So much stuff. It's breathtaking. But the folks that want to have postcard science, they just want to say, well, the TV said Rand Paul's bad because he criticized the guy who stupidly funded the Wuhan Institute of Virology where they have this virus breaking out, and everybody lied about it, and they're still deleting people who post about this obvious fact. This is not science. This is authoritarian loser ideology, desperate to maintain its crumbling relevance. So we have to push forward and provide positive solutions, provide clarity, provide conviction, and stay vigilant in defending our liberty. We'll take a break and return for hour 2. But for now, you can drop a comment. I see some of you have. We'll get to some of them on YouTube and Facebook. You can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. But for now, Godspeed.
For news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Top of Bay's all new news. Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news. From ABC News. I'm Michelle Franzen. 1 year after George Floyd's death in Minneapolis while in police custody, there are renewed calls for police reform. A national bill named after Floyd has already passed the House, but negotiations are ongoing in the Senate. Members of the Floyd family met with President Biden today at the White House. Afterwards, Floyd's nephew, Brandon Williams, among those who spoke. He says the president remained optimistic Congress will act even if it wasn't passed by today.
He said the deadline, he's not happy about it not being met, but all in all, he just wants the bill to be right and meaningful and that it holds George's legacy intact.
In Minneapolis, tributes and flowers now fill the site where Floyd died.
A moment of silence being held for 9 minutes and 29 seconds in Minnesota, the amount of time that former officer Derek Chauvin held his knee on George Floyd's neck 1 year ago today. At George Floyd Square in Minneapolis, the intersection of 38th Street in Chicago where Floyd died, the silence being broken by chants.
Right now, George is fighting for his life right now. George is trying to be as strong as possible right now.
Mark Remillard, ABC News.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell speaking out about House Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments likening mask wearing and vaccine cards to the Holocaust. He called her comments, quote, reprehensible.
In a tweet, the freshman congresswoman from Georgia making inflammatory and offensive statements about House COVID-19 safety rules requiring masks on the House floor, likening them to the treatment of Jews in Nazi Germany. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
These are sickening, reprehensible comments, and she should stop this vile language immediately.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy calling the comments appalling, saying it belittles the greatest atrocity committed in history. Ike Ajachi, ABC News, Washington.
And mixed on the Dow today, down, closing down. You're listening to ABC News.
Do you check your Google search results regularly? You should. People often get their first impression of you or your business online. Negative comments on the internet can impact your life and your livelihood. Take control of your online reputation. Get your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com. It may reveal negative posts from an ex-employee, upset patient or client, news article, legal issue, or even exposed personal information right there in your Google search results. Uncover what's lurking on the internet about you with reputationdefender.com's patented scan and get your free reputation report card. Or for immediate assistance with your reputation, call 800-401-6681. Our cutting-edge technology helps make your Google search results look their best. Call 800-401-6681. That's 800-401-6681. 800-401-6681. Or take the free scan at reputationdefender.com.
With COVID cases falling, the vaccination rates rising, more Americans are getting back to traveling. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says travelers are still required to follow COVID protocols.
The federal government still requires the traveling public to wear a mask on planes, buses, trains, and other forms of public transportation.
Some 6 million people are expected to fly over this Memorial Day holiday week. A federal judge in New York agreeing to dismiss the indictment against former President Trump's former campaign manager and advisor Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon had been among a group charged with defrauding donors of an online campaign to raise private funds for construction of a wall along the U.S. southern border. Former President Trump pardoned Bannon, and the judge agreed to dismiss the indictment, saying it's the proper course. Notably, the judge quoted from an old court decision that said pardon implies guilt. If there be no guilt, there is no ground for forgiveness. Bannon's 3 co-defendants received no reprieve from Trump and still face charges of swindling donors. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
Delaware is now the latest state to offer incentives to get vaccinated against COVID-19. That state announcing one vaccinated resident will win a $302,000 jackpot. That number, significant because 302 is the area code for Delaware. Another prize, a full scholarship to a state university. This is ABC News.
Ready for an oil change? Our professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts recommend all the best products to get the job done right, like 5 quarts of Mobil 1 full synthetic motor oil on sale now, just $28.95, and we'll make sure you have all the supplies you need, including a filter, funnel, shop towels, drain pan, and more. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Mental illness is up dramatically since the epidemic hit America. Consider this from the Holy Scripture.
Prepare your minds for action, and being sober-minded, set your hope full on the grace that will be brought to you. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 13.
Are you sober-minded? Do you think there's no hope? There is, and it's waiting for you at your local church. There you'll find a healthy mindset that will give you strength and wisdom. The welcoming committee is there waiting for you. See you soon.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. Welcome back to the program. We're going to have a great time together again, looking at the news headlines and trying to make sense of this world gone mad and another bout of groupthink gone wild. That's what we're dealing with. That's what we're having to confront. And it's a good process because we can come out on the other side much stronger, much better than ever before. But it's going to take a lot of hard work to overcome all of these sacred cows that continue to inundate us with fear. Fear is the driver towards tyranny in all cases, in all times. Fear is the number one selling point. CNBC reports Moderna says its COVID vaccine is 100% effective in teens. Plans to seek FDA okay in early June. So they're going to target that for 12 to 17-year-olds. Fox says poll over 1 billion people worldwide unwilling to get COVID-19 vaccine. Global herd immunity at risk. So the media is trying to lie to people to let them think that there's no way you can have natural herd immunity. The article says, when broken down by individual countries, Myanmar had the highest percentage of adults willing to get the vaccine at 96%. Kazakhstan had the lowest at 25%. So they want us to think like good little globalists, trying to micromanage the affairs of the whole world through the lens of government, lockdowns, dictates, not based on science, and other coercion-based attempts. The Mirror says William Shakespeare dies at 81 after becoming first man in the world to get COVID vaccine. The first man in the world to be given the COVID vaccine has died. Tributes to him have been paid to 81-year-old William Shakespeare, who hit global headlines on December 8th last year when he became the first man to have the jab at the University Hospital, Coventry, in Warwickshire. The New York Times reports CDC will not investigate mild infections in vaccinated Americans. So see how they changed the science halfway through? They counted every little case, even if there was no side effects going on. But now, because they want to be marketing firms that they are for big pharmaceutical and government bureaucracy, now they want to make it look good. So they got to sell it to you through persuasion. Just realize you're dealing with persuasion, or propaganda is the classical term. Julie Cohn was fully vaccinated when she went to cheer at her 12-year-old son's basketball game in March. Midway through the match, he asked to remove his mask because he was getting so hot. She thought little of it. 3 days later, he had a sore throat. He tested positive for coronavirus, as did his younger brother a few days later. Ms. Cohn cared for them thinking she was protected, but she woke up with what seemed like a head cold on March 28th. The next day, she too tested positive. No vaccine provides perfect protection, and so-called breakthrough infections after coronavirus vaccination are rare and unlikely to lead to serious illness. Federal health officials have told fully vaccinated people they no longer need to wear masks or maintain social distance because they are protected, nor do they need to be tested or quarantined after an exposure unless they develop symptoms. Now, the CDC has stopped investigating breakthrough infections among fully vaccinated people unless they become so sick that they are hospitalized or die. Earlier this year, the agency was monitoring all cases. Why? Because they wanted to become PR firms for their clients, the big pharmaceutical companies. Isn't it obvious? Through the end of April, when some 101 million Americans had been vaccinated, the CDC had received 10,262 reports of breakthrough infections from 46 states and territories, a number that was very likely a substantial undercount, according to a CDC report issued on Tuesday. Genomic sequencing could be done on only 555, or about 5% of the reported breakthrough cases. The numbers suggest that the vaccines are highly effective and generally working as expected. But there's been no long-term studies as to the long-term effects of these novel new approaches to administering a vaccine. And so they don't tell you that in the news reports because they're owned by groupthink. They're possessed by it. Speaking of possession, I saw a story in New Republic that says the exorcists who are battling Black Lives Matter. Across the country, right-wing Catholic clerics are weaponizing their rights to own the libs. In Ellsberg, Pennsylvania, there is a Vatican-trained exorcist and professed expert on spiritual warfare who lectures and tweets about the demonic forces of our times. It might surprise you to learn that these latter-day Reagan McNeils bedeviling our safe suburban homes are Black Lives Matter, Marxism, critical race theory, intersectionality, and wokeness. And this cleric is not the only exorcist very publicly conflating the evil one with the left, real and imagined. Last fall, a Portland archbishop led a procession into a public park where he conducted a Latin exorcism to dispel the evil spirits left by racial justice activists. So the article is disparaging this, but and I don't know the full details of what it gets into. I just saw a little bit here that I read, but if we want to understand possession, we have to understand that it is about groupthink that possesses people. In the story of Jesus and the demoniac who lives in the region of the Gerasenes, Jesus asks him his name, and he says, "My name is Legion." The word legion is the word for the military unit that was the symbol of Roman imperial occupation of that region. So this article is trying to be cute by making fun of people for taking exorcism as a tool to deal with ideological possession, but it very much, there is a line that you can see, you can directly connect ideological possession with the possession that's identified in the Bible, where we see, again, a man is explained to be possessed by the spirit of Roman occupation, in other words, when he calls himself Legion. But of course, that's falling on deaf ears to those who are in groupthink media, who are only going to regurgitate whatever is fashionable, whatever convenient for the powerful. And what's convenient for the powerful are things like Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, Marxism, and intersectionality, which do everything to divide the powerless against each other so as to maintain power for the rich crony elites. They want the powerless, the poor, the middle class. They want us all fighting over and over and over again about who is the most victimized of this vicious machine, but nobody does anything to stop it. Today, the media is celebrating how they have continued to get so many people on board with Black Lives Matter because of the death of George Floyd. This is the 1-year anniversary of his death. That man shouldn't have died. But have they done anything to address the legal constructs that allowed him to die for such ridiculous reasons? For example, you have the issue of being accused of issuing a $20 bill. That's a legal tender law. Why isn't the media doing exposés about the oppression of legal tender laws? How the Federal Reserve and the media's buddies in the Wall Street banks get to create money out of thin air, diluting your purchasing power, but then somebody else, like George Floyd, he passes a 20 that's perceived to be illegitimate, and he has to have an arrest for it. How can you have unjust weights and measures that people who have power can dilute purchasing power? I'm not saying we should have counterfeiting money. I'm saying we are in a lawless state in which the media does not want to hold the powerful accountable. Let's have that conversation, media. Why is it that George Floyd was arrested for doing the very thing that the federal accused of? We don't know if he did it or not. I don't know. But he was accused of doing the very thing that the Federal Reserve does, which is your wonderful, powerful, omnipotent machine of printing money out of thin air. Why doesn't the media have that conversation? We should repeal legal tender laws so that people aren't forced to be in a situation where they can be accused of passing a fake 20 when the government creates fake 20s and by the billions and billions and billions every day to finance their redistribution of wealth from the poor and the middle class to the rich and the elite. Why don't they want to have that conversation? You see, they don't want to have good conversations. They want to trivialize everything to pit the powerless against the powerless. None of us can stop the Federal Reserve. None of us can stop the stupid lockdowns that put George Floyd in the situation he was in financially. None of us can stop the war on drugs, which is an abysmal failure, which because it exists allows for things like fentanyl to get into the product when people don't really want that. None of us can deal with the corruption that the FDA did where they put oxycodone into the market because, again, government had subsidized the vegetable oils that we have learned, according to Professor Bruce Hammock in our interview on aneighborschoice.com, are causing the pain to skyrocket in people, which then turns them to the need for oxycodone, which the FDA tells them and misleads them that it's safe and not going to get you addicted. You see, we can connect the whole. See, they want to talk about how they can talk about systemic oppression, but we are talking about systemic oppression. That's what it looks like, what we're talking about. How you got a government that fails us and sends us into a harm's way with seed oils and tells us it's good for us, causing pain to go up. Go watch it. I'm telling you guys, spend time watching this deep dive conversation with the professors who have the receipts, who have the science to show how government subsidized seed oils led to the opioid crisis. That's the conversation we need to be having if we had an honest, decent, good, free press. Not just me doing it. That's what everybody should be talking about. And they should be talking about how all these different corrupt monopoly institutions of force in government have created a situation where George Floyd was in a situation that he was in. That he can pass a $20 bill that's supposed to be counterfeit, but the Federal Reserve can create trillions of dollars of inflated counterfeit to debase our currency. Even though the Constitution says only Congress shall coin the money. Where did they get the idea that they could delegate this to a quasi-government, quasi-private entity? Run with the board being the banks that are supposed to be... Come on, it's such a joke, guys. Come on. It's such a scam against the poor and the middle class. But that's what we see. We see so many different issues that continue to be left alone because they want to divide us. They, being those who inundate us constantly with, like the media does, we're supposed to support Black Lives Matter because what does blacklivesmatter.com say? We want to disrupt the Western nuclear family. They do nothing to help the families. Have they abolished the Eric Garner law that killed Eric Garner? The cigarette license that New York State has that allowed people to arrest Eric Garner for selling unlicensed cigarettes? No. Joe Biden wants to expand those situations by criminalizing menthol cigarette sales, which would create more Eric Garner situations where people lose their life for no reason. And then what does he do? When he creates laws like that, which he's been doing his entire life, Joe Biden and every cookie-cutter politician that's exactly like him on both sides, what do? When a police officer has to enforce the laws that they put on the books? If it goes wrong, they say, hey, look, that's a problem between you and your white neighbor or something. They distract and deflect and scapegoat so that everybody is fighting everybody and they remain powerless. No, what have they done? And this is the media is trying to tell us this 1 year anniversary of George Floyd. Have they abolished legal tender laws so people can have honest money, competitive money, so they don't have to be forced into an inflated currency like the Federal Reserve System that debases our savings and debases our purchasing power and gives money to the rich and the elite, the corporations? Have they done that? Have they talked about how they should end the war on drugs? Has Joe Biden pardoned every nonviolent offender in the federal prison today? He's done nothing, absolutely nothing. But the media won't tell you that because the media is an accusatory machine. All they want to do is accuse, and they love to accuse the powerless so that the powerless fight the powerless over and over and over again. And nothing changes. You still got a crooked Federal Reserve System. You still got a crooked war on drugs. You still got a crooked war on poverty. You still got a crooked collection of fake trade deals. You still got a crooked food system that tells you to eat seed oils at your own health detriment. You see how they're giving us a raw deal? Every one of us should be outraged right now. You should demand an end to the corrupt government subsidies to corn and soy and all this garbage slop they put in our foods, causing us to have severe pain and all these things. We should demand an end to this. Demand an end to the Federal Reserve monopoly on money. We should demand an end to the war on drugs. We should demand an end to corporate welfare. We should demand an end to these crony, crooked trade deals. But instead, we have this bigoted, hateful media machine, this accusatory machine that spends every moment of revelation of what's going on in our system. They try to cloud our judgment and distort us into going off into another direction. And that is a shame. I'm David Gornowski. We'll take a break and return in just a moment.
David Gornowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
727-587-1040 is the number to call in. It's Neighbor's Choice Radio. We're live, 727-587-1040. Also, you can drop a comment on our YouTube stream. Just search for David Gronowski on YouTube and subscribe, hit the bell, whatever that they want you to do to try to follow our content. I don't know. Some people say they have a very difficult time finding our content on YouTube and Facebook, even though they subscribe and hit everything. So I really don't care about those platforms, although I really enjoy all the great folks that I've met on these platforms. So I'm kind of a mixed feeling about the situation. Some people have said, hey, why don't you just cut your ties with these failing media publishers, Facebook and YouTube completely? But at the same time, look at all the great, fun, interesting, entertaining, and educated, wise folks that I've met on these platforms. I just hope that whatever happens, if they end up completely, blocking us because we are criticizing big war machine, big killing machine, big bank, big farm, and all that stuff, that our audience that we've developed here on those platforms can follow us over to whatever other platform we're on. Because, they're going to continually try to censor anybody who speaks out against the powerful. They're really desperate. They really always overplay their game because they're hubristic. These special interests, and they always overplay their game. They always overreach, and it always backfires. So going back to this story just for a moment about Rand Paul, being attacked, the media tries to mock, his concern. They try to belittle it. They want to, create an environment which they kind of dismiss his concerns. When a suspicious package filled with white showed up at the house in Kentucky on Monday for Senator Rand Paul, said he knew exactly who was to blame for inspiring the threat. Pop singer Richard Marx. See, they say it. This is the Washington Post, which never found a war they didn't want to shill for. But they say that to try to mock and dehumanize him. Imagine if this happened, we don't want it to happen to anybody, but imagine if it happened to a media darling on the left, Liz Cheney or those folks. They would make it the biggest story. They would say, oh my goodness, we need a new bill to crack down on anybody who criticizes Liz Cheney or AOC. But when it's on people who don't have as much power, they dehumanize and belittle their concerns for safety. It's pathetic. You should always support human life in all of its forms. Every human person is sacred. Shame on the media. Their disgusting behaviors continually denigrate the conversation. Back in a moment.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. Yeah, man.
Weekdays, 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
We should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason and see a video.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays, 11 to 2. News Talk 1040, WHPO.
In Minneapolis today, a family-friendly street festival, musical performances, and a moment of silence in honor of George Floyd a year after his death while in police custody. President Biden met with members of the Floyd family today at the White House.
Being here today is an honor, to meet with the president and the vice president and for them to show their concern to our family.
Floyd's brother, Terrence, qualified immunity for police officers appears to be the biggest roadblock as negotiations continue at a snail's pace on a police reform bill. Right now, neither side is budging. A benchmark in the battle against COVID-19, the CDC says half of all U.S. adults, more than 129 million people, are now fully vaccinated against the virus. Stocks closed slightly lower today as investors weigh the economic recovery against the prospect of inflation. The Dow fell just over 80 points. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
And Neighbor's Choice returns. So we look at this story in Mediaite. AP reporter runs for cover after gunshots ring out during report on anniversary of George Floyd's death. Associated Press journalist Philip Crowther reported from Minneapolis on the one-year anniversary of George's murder by a police officer had to duck for cover as gunshots rang out in the middle of his coverage. Reporters descended on George Floyd Square on Tuesday to cover the scene a year after Floyd was murdered by former police officer Derek Chauvin in a brutal killing that was caught on video by bystanders and sparked global protests against police brutality and racial injustice. Crowther was on the scene filming a report when a series of bangs erupted, forcing him and others to run for shelter. Crowther uploaded the raw footage of his interrupted report to Twitter, along with an update that we see one broken window, apparently from one of the shots fired. Consensus among reporters here at George Floyd Square was that we heard anywhere between a dozen and 24 shots fired. So they continue to want to have a window dressing approach where they think that symbolic rhetorical gestures are more important than action. Joe Biden, again, is doing absolutely nothing to stop the war on drugs. He's doing nothing to stop the war on economic vitality that's caused by all the regulatory burden, by the trade deals that are rigged and written by the foxes that are supposed to be guarding the henhouse, right? He does nothing to address the systemic abuses. They like to use that word, systemic oppression, the McWoke crowd. But they don't even want to have the conversation about systemic abuses. They don't want to talk about ending these trade deals. They don't want to talk about ending, not just ending, but replacing them with nothing. Donald Trump got rid of NAFTA and he replaced it with what? Another version of managed trade. We don't need managed trade. They don't do anything to stop corporate welfare. Why doesn't Biden stop the corporate welfare? Why doesn't he stop all of the war on drugs? Why can't he do that? Can't do that, can he? But the media doesn't tell you that he's not going to do that because they want you to see him as the hero, the flavor of the month. Do we really want to live in a world in which the destruction of these cities that have been run by monopoly, liberal rule will continually be spread to every other city and town across America? Do we really need to look at that record and say, yeah, let's try that here? Wow, that was very successful. Can we emulate that policy of corporatism and welfarism and regulatory control and high taxes? Why don't we try something different? Well, the media doesn't want us to have that conversation. The media wants us to have the conversation that they want to have, where the powerful are protected and told that they are your heroes. They're your saviors. The prime example of that is, again, going back to Dr. Fauci. He's the guy that should be completely investigated for why in the world was he and his group signing off on continually funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology, when the State Department and other people were saying there are some serious security issues. This is a dentist level of security. Do not continually fund this. He kept doing it. When you have that ridiculousness, systemically oppress poor people of all backgrounds. And he is now being manufactured in front of your eyes by the sycophantic state media to be somehow the savior of justice and racial issues. You have to be so low info to believe that, right? You have to be so ignorant to believe that nonsense. Thankfully, so few people do, I believe. Revolver.news has a story. White liberal mother regrets offering daughter as ritual sacrifice to diversity gods of the globalist American empire. Care and Feeding is Slate.com's regular parenting column. Given Slate's readership, the column has published letters about all kinds of different things, but recently the publication published a stunning letter from a parent on the topic of her daughter's education. Dear Care and Feeding, I am a liberal, white, upper middle class parent, and we live in a mixed income, racially integrated urban neighborhood. When it came time to enroll our daughter in high school, we selected a school that was majority black because it was close by, and we rejected the notion of getting caught up in which magnet school was most prestigious. Our daughter had a horrible time there. She was harassed so much that we had to pull her out, and other non-black students there were victimized because of their race. I am struggling to make sense of the experience. I think she's managed it well and hasn't let it affect her general views on race, and I believe I'm doing the same. But mostly I am just so angry that our daughter had to endure this, and I feel guilty that I put her in this position. I also feel caught between friends who seem to want to say, I told you so, and to those who seem to think that saying that she was the victim of racial harassment somehow makes me seem racist since it was at the hands of black students. Maybe I should just chalk it up to bad luck, but how can I let go of the guilt and anger and all the other awful reactions I'm having to this? Signed, Hoping I'm Not a Karen. In his response to Hoping I'm Not a Karen, let's call her Hank from now on, Slate's Jamila Lemieux briefly makes the required sounds about bullying being unacceptable, feeling sorry for her daughter, blah, blah, blah. But after having done that, Lemieux quickly tells us what she really thinks. Hank's daughter deserved what happened to her because of her race. The only thing she doesn't deserve, in fact, is sympathy. Quote, recognize that in an area like the one you live in, one that sounds like it is somewhere in the process of gentrification, an influx of upper middle class white folks can be absolutely devastating. After years of being told that your community was unimportant and unworthy of resources, you get to watch it become a hotspot, see investment that would have never been made on your behalf. Black folks who once had the hood as a place to be surrounded by their own kind after long days of having to labor for white people now have to watch whites become the most affluent and seemingly most content residents of our ghettos. In other words, Hank and her daughter are invaders guilty of colonizing a space their race wasn't welcome in. Of course, as Lemieux makes clear, they were racist both when they didn't live there because they weren't investing in the neighborhood and when they chose to do so. Either way, they were the villain because of their skin color. Quote, your daughter might not have done anything deliberately to harm anyone or to invite mistreatment, but her presence disrupts something truly fragile, the feeling of safety black kids get from being with other black kids. They know the world is kinder to your child than it is to them. The combination of that knowledge, that pain, and their youth can be very volatile. Revolver goes on to say, given the epic amounts of interpersonal violence among American black community, it's unclear where Lemieux is getting her idea of safety, but we will overlook that to focus on her morally warped vision. Hank's daughter didn't have to do anything to deserve to be bullied. Merely existing with white skin was enough to make her an acceptable target. So, you look at this story, and again, it's just a reminder of what this media environment and what the public school, what the colleges continually are fostering, which is this return to tribalism, which is a return to embracing all kinds of collectivist thinking, right? We have a society that is so fixated on collectivizing that we are dehumanizing the value of individual human life. And you see that in this story. Because what critical theory wants to do is say the problem is quarantined. All human sin and oppression can be quarantined into this race group or fit people. Instead of if critical theory is dealing with obesity, then it's fit people. They're the problem. If it's a race issue, they try to quarantine it into whiteness, right? Whiteness becomes a synonym for sin. If it's a matter of gender stuff, then all of a sudden it becomes, it's maleness, toxic masculinity or whatever. So they're just living out all these insane delusions, all of which are clouding and directing their attention away from the real scene of the crime, which is human nature, which is the fallenness of man, that human beings all have a proclivity to scapegoat. And these liberal utopian religions that they buy into teach them that, hey, it's okay, I can go into this situation and everything will be perfect. But then they realize that there's still that stubborn human impulse to bully people who are different from you, to dehumanize people who are different from you, to hurt people who are different from you. And then they have this weird cognitive dissonance where they're like, wait a second, I thought that humans were perfect and it's only toxic whiteness or toxic masculinity which is causing oppression. So they've been sold a bill of goods from this false religion that's a cheap microwave ripoff of Christianity. Because it sounds like Christianity in the sense that it's trying to present itself as concerned with victimization. But when you look at what it's presenting, the answers are always guiding them away from the real problem, which is the human heart. The record of history is clear that the human heart is indicted across the board. That you go to any place around history, anywhere around the map, and you'll see insider groups picking on and hurting in so many different ways those who are different from them. That doesn't make that right at all, but what that means is that indicts the human heart. But what critical theory does is it says, do not look at the human heart. Let's misdirect attention and scapegoat. So the scapegoating continues. Rather than recognizing the universal human temptation to scapegoat and to otherize and to dehumanize, which is where we all need to be focusing our attention, critical theory blinds us from dealing with the real systemic oppression, and it directs us towards more scapegoats, More scapegoats. It's not the human heart. It's whiteness. It's masculinity. It's this. It's that. It's this. Right? Anything. But don't you ever look at the human heart. That's what critical theory is saying. Don't you ever look in the mirror. Don't you ever recognize the fallen nature of man. Don't you ever recognize why it's so bad to give fallen human beings unlimited power. And why having a state-run society micromanaging our affairs is an invitation to the worst types of authoritarian destruction of everybody one can imagine. See, they never want to indict the human heart, and so they're always scapegoating some external identity marker. And as a result, what happens? The tyranny continues. The war on drugs continues. The ridiculous neo-imperial foreign policy of Biden, Kamala Harris continues unabated. Right? And I put their names up. It's been everybody since before them too. But there's one thing that's clear. The media is lockstep in support of politicians who perpetuate the war machine. That's why they laugh at Rand Paul whenever his neighbor harmed him and when people were threatening him and when crowds push it. They always, 100%, all the media always goes to minimize his danger. It's because people like him scare them more than anything else. They want to have Mitch McConnell. They want to have Liz Cheney. They don't want someone who is outflanking them where it comes to justice issues, like Rand Paul does, or outflanks them where it comes to peace issues and ending wars. Outflank them where it comes to dealing with the things that are oppressing people, like the crony-written regulations and the crony subsidized seed oils and all the other things. They don't want to have that conversation. So they hate smart, intelligent, wise voices who outflank them and make them look bad. It's just like the Republican Party. They hated Rand Paul's father, because he made them look bad. That they were always quoting Reagan about abolishing government, and then they get up there and they don't have anything they want to actually do, and nothing on their record shows that they've done anything to the point. And Ron Paul comes out and he's got an amazing record, amazing voting record, and he's just a clean, simple presentation, right? They're all trying to tinker with the tax code. He says, abolish the income tax. We don't need it. We can use tariffs and so forth to fund the difference and downsize government dramatically and then fund the difference if there's a shortfall. So they can't handle the real thing. And by they, I mean those who are owned by groupthink and want to maintain their position of power by excluding people who violate their sense of conformity and transcendence. That's what we're dealing with. That's why critical theory is such a pernicious concept, because it's being used as a bludgeon. I've studied this stuff. I can bring back the papers I've written about critical theory. I understand their language. I get it. And there are some things I actually agree with. That's why I can critique it, because I understand it. They don't understand what they hate. They just are jealous of it. They're jealous of people who are actually fighting for real justice. They're jealous of people. I'm talking about the folks who are pushing McWokeism. They really believe they're more pure and just as they go hand in hand with Liz Cheney starting more wars. That's all you need to know about these folks that continually browbeat the powerless whenever there's a tragedy, whenever there's a killing. They're always browbeating and hitting and attacking and punching down at the poor and the middle class. And it's time to say, no, we're not going to put up with that. Just because we promote nonviolence doesn't mean you have to promote accepting the guilt they try to transfer on you. That's so important. I want you to understand this. When Jesus accepted the cross, he did not accept the guilt. He did not accept the accusations that were levied against him. And what critical theory tries to do is it wants you to admit that you are the scapegoat. It wants you to say, yes, I am the villain you say I am, and then be scapegoated. And you do not, and you cannot accept that guilt that they tried to quarantine on you. At the same time, this is where it's tricky. we do have to acknowledge that all humans, including ourselves, can be tempted to do wicked, terrible things, and scapegoating is one of them. But we do not. No individual is to accept what the mob accuses against them. Because the moment you do that, then they smell blood, and then they want to complete the sacrifice. This is why in ancient and earlier times in history, they wanted to get a forced confession out of the heretic or the witch before they could complete the sacrifice. It was so important to get that admission of guilt. And so when they deprive people of their livelihood, they deprive people of their careers, they deprive people of their safety, they deprive people of their esteem, they deprive people of their good name, they slander and lie them, and then they want them to grovel and say, I'm sorry, I am the bad person, you told me I'm so evil, I'm so evil, I'm so evil. And then they get worse and get more vicious. It's wicked. It is wicked. And we do need an exorcism of this garbage. It's pathetic and wicked to its core. And it's going to destroy everybody's lives. It's not going to destroy conservatives or liberals. It's going to destroy everybody's lives if this kind of disgusting, hateful ideology continues to be successfully infecting the hearts and minds of the next generation. I don't think it will. I think it's a pathetic joke. And if we continue to fight and provide real justice instead of these fake corporatist, fake Mick justice stuff, we can get the next generation to have a better society without this stuff holding them back. We'll take a break and return.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We're live on radio, podcast, video stream, all of it, which you can find at aneighborschoice.com, our website. That's aneighborschoice.com. The commenter, Aldous Burbank, says, if only Fauci passed a phony $20 bill, then we'd investigate. Aaron says, I almost feel sorry for progressives. They sowed the wind, now they're reaping the whirlwind. Another says, the most reprehensible part of critical theory is how it baits otherwise well-intended people who want to believe they're doing the right thing. And so, there's a lot of things to think about with that. But I want to look at this story here, nationalfile.com. It says, Exclusive government agency believes Dominion uses cellular modems experts say could wreak havoc on an election. Stunning Inspector General letter to a congressman obtained by National File. The U.S. Election Assistance Commission believes Dominion voting systems machines in Michigan use modem transmission features and do not match the EAC certified system configuration, according to a letter the Inspector General of the EAC sent to U.S. Congressman Bill Posey, which was obtained by National File. A top Dominion executive reportedly testified that his machines use cellular modems, which experts previously said make Michigan's elections vulnerable. EAC is an independent agency of the government created by the Help America Vote Act of 2002. Part of the EAC's mandate is to provide information and resources regarding election administration throughout the country. While the EAC is critical of the use of cellular modems to transmit data, Dominion CEO John Polis reportedly testified on December 15th that while Dominion machines are not connected to the internet, in some places they use cellular modems to transmit results after hours. So that's another story that you're not allowed to talk to, according to bigots in corporate press media outlets. You're not allowed to say anything about it. You're supposed to live in a totalitarian society where you can't say anything about that. We're not going to put up with their nonsense. They don't have any ideas if they have to bully people. We're just going to keep ignoring them and moving on. Becker News reports that Donald Trump is going to bring back MAGA rallies. He reveals first 4 states he will go to ahead of 2022 midterms. He said, Donald Trump says relatively soon we'll be doing one in Florida. We're going to do one in Ohio. We're going to do one in Georgia. We're going to do one in North Carolina. He told One America News. We'll be announcing them very soon over the next week or two, and I think we'll probably start in Florida and Ohio. We'll be announcing the rallies very shortly. Another story I wanted to get to here before our time's up today. The University of Minnesota has a story. Previous COVID-19 may cut risk of reinfection by 84%. People who had COVID-19 had an 84% lower risk of becoming reinfected and a 93% lower risk of symptomatic infection during 7 months of follow-up, according to findings from a large multi-center study published late last week in The Lancet, which is a very highly esteemed journal. The prospective cohort SARS-CoV-2 immunity and reinfection evaluation study by Public Health England Collindale researchers involved 25,661 workers at public hospitals throughout England who were tested for SARS-CoV-2 every 2 to 4 weeks and antibodies at enrollment in every 4 weeks. Volunteers also completed questionnaires on symptoms and exposures every 2 weeks. Of the 25,661 participants, 32.3% were assigned to the baseline positivity, possibly or probably previously infected group, and 67.7% were assigned to the negative group. Of the 8,278 positive participants, 91.2% had SARS-CoV-2 antibodies at study enrollment, while 7% were negative for antibodies that had a previously positive antibody and/or coronavirus test. So apparently the herd immunity thing can happen naturally, according to that study. Provides some evidence in that direction, which of course is not pleasing to the TV party because, what are they going to do? Their sponsors tell them what to say. And they want to distort and attack science itself and attack the idea of natural herd immunity. Well, it's not going to happen. We're not going to allow people who want to take us back into reactionary dark age approach to science. They're not going to prevail. The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose and it will defend itself. I'm David Gronowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Godspeed.